Hey, I'm Tommy Ellison, and this is Senior Moments. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning, but I remember every detail of that time I came this close to being suspended my senior year in high school, just 3 weeks before graduation. So stick around. This is proof that some things from a misspent youth just don't fade away. Let's go. Well, hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I use that term loosely for gentlemen. I'm Tommy Ellison, and welcome to Senior Moments, Evidence of a Misspent Youth. This is episode number 28, and those of you who are watching live, I appreciate you being here with me, and I hope you'll find it to be a good episode for you to listen to and watch and remember, and be sure and comment if you would. Because I would bet you that what I'm about to talk about today maybe happened in your family. The title of this episode is The Real Life Griswolds of Route 66. Now, that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're a big fan of Chevy Chase movies and the Griswold families. And I believe the very first one was called Family Vacation. And there were some sequels, European Vacation, and of course, Christmas Vacation was probably one of my favorites. I tend to watch it every year during the Christmas time, and that and Die Hard, two great Christmas movies, right? But anyway, the original Griswold Family Vacation movie, it was a classic, and if you remember correctly, it was just a series of things that happen to families when you're riding along in the family station wagon headed to, I think, what was the name of that place? Wally World was the final destination that they were headed. And you'll actually see some or hear some similarities in this story that I'm about to tell you. It was, just to put it in context, it was the summer of 1964, maybe 1963. I don't think I'd quite gotten to high school yet. And I was about 13, maybe 14. I'm a little gray on that actual time, but I do remember this. My little sister, Anna, was 3, maybe 4. I'm thinking maybe 3. So she was 10 years my junior. So that would put me about 13 maybe. And of course, Mom and Dad decided it was time for the traditional great American family vacation. 2 weeks on the road from Alabama all the way to California, and eventually to go north from California to Seattle, Washington, and then cut a diagonal back down through the United States to our home here in Birmingham, Alabama. So that was the plan. And it wasn't like flying back then. We piled into the Cadillac. My dad was always a big fan of the Cadillac Sedan DeVille, the 4-door, the big one, the gas guzzler that they, I think, eventually banned. And it was, of course, loaded with luggage, and it was loaded with an ice chest on the floorboard. And we headed west through Mississippi and eventually hit Route 66. You know that song. If you ever want to travel west, right? Everybody covered that one. And eventually, on Route 66, that took us all the way to California. Now, that highway, Route 66, was kind of magic back then because, it was the open road. Most of the time it was 2-lane roads. There were, the old-fashioned gas stations with the glass pumps and the roadside motels with the names like the Flagstaff Inn and the Tucumcari, New Mexico Motel. And we would drive, my dad would be driving most of the time, and he was always about getting somewhere fast. And so we would drive maybe 10 or 12 hours a day. And of course, my sister and I were riding in the back seat, and most of the time we were either playing games or, we used to play a game called cow poker. and you would count the cows on my side of the road as my score, and the other side of the road would be her score. And so whoever had the most cows at the end of the day would win. And we had some kind of a deal where we tried to identify car tags from different states. So we had all these games to kind of keep us busy. This was before iPads and, built-in video players in the back seats of cars. And so typically when we got to a motel, where the neon signs were blinking vacancy, Anna and I would run straight for the pool. And the one in Tucumcari, New Mexico, I remember had the best pool. It was a big, big sparkling pool right in the middle of the courtyard. And I remember the Flagstaff Inn had a pool, but it was so cold in the mountain area there. Flagstaff was just south of the Grand Canyon. And even though it was July, it was very cold there. And so their outdoor pool was closed. And I remember when we were checking out and loading the car with luggage, I found out that they actually had an indoor pool, which was somewhat catastrophic to me because I loved swimming. And so consequently, an indoor pool would have been a very novel idea. I don't know that I shouldn't say that because I did take swimming lessons at the YW, which had an indoor pool. But it was kind of a collection of pools that I was trying to engage in here. So we found out about the indoor pool, so go figure. So we stopped at places, in Texas like the King's Ranch, and then, of course, the Grand Canyon. We saw that and spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours there looking at the canyon and the hole in the ground. I was always fascinated by that, kind of a sense of awe that comes on you when you first see the Grand Canyon. You're walking through this brushy area, just flat, brushy area, and then all of a sudden, boom, the Grand Canyon just opens up in front of you. And of course, it's probably a mile deep right there where the South Ridge is. And so it was fantastic. That was my first time to see the Grand Canyon. And then we went to Disneyland. I mean, we were hitting all the sites. I don't know how my dad and mom afforded all this, but gas was cheap, probably 20 cents a gallon back then. But I remember the Magic Shop on Main Street in Disneyland. And I've always wondered, Steve Martin worked in that Magic Shop. And I've always wondered if I might have even seen him there, but based on the window of time that he claimed to be there and the time that I was possibly there might have been some overlap, but I was always fascinated and actually bought one of my first magic tricks. I had $20 to spend on souvenirs for that whole trip, and I blew it all in that Magic Shop on one prop, which I still have today. I'm not going to bring it out, but I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, from California, we headed north towards Seattle, and then we looped back east, coming through on a diagonal, and that's where we came across our next big planned expedition, and that was the Yellowstone National Park. And that's really kind of where this real adventure happened. And why, it was referred to as Meet the Ellisons, the real-life Griswolds of Route 66. You'll see the story of my sister there and me riding in the back seat, my mom behind the wheel, and my dad in the passenger seat. And you'll also see the brown bear and the piece of cheese, and all that's going to fall in place here in just a moment as we tell this story. So here's the bear story. My dad, first of all, he was a deputy sheriff, and I don't know if that has any bearing on this story or not, but he was famous for teasing animals. He just enjoyed the heck out of teasing animals, whether it be dogs or cats. Or we would go to the zoo on Sunday afternoon, and he would get over where the monkeys were in the cages, the ones that were, the sidewalk had a little rail, and then there was the monkey cage. It wasn't the Monkey Island that they had back then. These were larger monkeys, like chimpanzees, really. And he would get a empty popcorn box out of the garbage can, and he would walk over there with that popcorn box. And of course, the monkeys are all thinking they're going to get a snack out of this thing. And he would reach into the box, which was empty, and kind of pantomime eating popcorn. And then he would hold the box over for the monkey to reach his hand in to get a treat. And of course, when he did, he would clamp down on that monkey's hand, and the monkey would start to scream. And I mean, it was all in fun for him, except the zookeepers. They weren't real happy about it, and he sometimes had to flash his badge to get out of trouble with the Birmingham Zoo folks. But in another incident that happened at the zoo, we were there on a Sunday afternoon, and we went to what they called the snake and the reptile house, I believe. And we were walking through it, and they had these wall-mounted terrariums of different spiders and snakes and lizards and, Gila monsters and all manner of critters from the desert. And he would start tapping on the glass. My dad he loved to aggravate the snakes, but he hated snakes. I really don't understand the connection there, because he was afraid of a snake big time. And of course, he grew up being a hunter, and so he was always running into snakes, and so I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. But on this particular day, it was a hot summer day at the Birmingham Zoo, and he's standing at the face of this terrarium mounted in the wall, and there's a big giant rattlesnake that's coiled up, and the rattles are just going nuts. And my dad's tapping on the glass with a coin to aggravate him, hoping, I guess, to make him strike, when the snake got mad enough. Well, I guess you can say the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, because on this hot summer day, while he was aggravating that rattlesnake, I reached up and pinched him on the back of his leg. And I can't even repeat the expletive that he yelled at. And he wheeled around to see who it was. And I was a little shorter at the time, and so he looked over my head and saw a woman standing behind him who he immediately thought was the culprit, but he really didn't know what to say, because he didn't know the woman, and yet this woman had just pinched him on the upper part of his leg near the thigh, and it was on the thigh, and he didn't know what to say. And at that point, he looked down and he saw me standing there laughing, smiling. I was laughing, and I thought he was going to kill me. He got so mad at me, but I was saved by my mom, who, standing in the background, looked at him and said, "Tom, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. You like to dish it out, but you can't take it." And so he calmed down eventually, and we went on our way visiting the zoo that day. So this is my dad's mentality about aggravating and just messing with animals. So when we pulled into Yellowstone and he saw the "Do Not Feed the Bears" sign, well, he just took that like it was just a challenge to him. And my sister will attest to the validity of this story. And this is what I guess the highlight of that vacation trip was. We were all in the car. Mom was driving the road that goes to the upper portion of the park, where you would find more bears than perhaps in the southern portion. And so, this weren't Yogi Bear and Boo Boo. This was the real deals. These were big brown bears. And Dad was in the passenger seat. Anna was in the back seat with me. And Dad had an ice chest full of sandwich fixings. We were going to make sandwiches somewhere along the way and have a picnic in the park. And so in that in that ice chest, there was all the fixings, the bread, the sliced luncheon meat and cheese and condiments, mustard, ketchup, blah, blah, blah. All were in that cooler on the floorboard between my dad's legs. Now, back then, the Cadillac, they had a massive amount of leg room. That's why he enjoyed them so much. And so he reaches in. Oh, well, here's the deal. We're riding up through this road in the park, and there on the side of the road was a big brown bear. Big brown bear. That's hard to say twice. Standing on the side of the road, just kind of lolling about. And so Dad reaches in the ice chest, pulls out a slice of cheese. This was the old kind before it was individually wrapped. And so he rolls down his electric window and tosses it out the window to the bear that had kind of been standing there near the car, probably 10, 15 foot away. He just throws that piece of cheese out into the road. And of course, the bear sees what's happening. He goes, picks it up, looks at it, eats it, and decides that he wanted seconds. So he kind of started moving towards the car in a kind of a slow, lumbering way, like a bear would do. And so Dad reached into the cooler where there was a package of luncheon meat and was attempting to remove a slice from the package. And unfortunately, he was holding it high enough to where the bear, which was kind of now standing and approaching the car, could see that package of luncheon meat and the fact that, hey, I'm about to get another treat here, and begins to walk towards the car. And rather than hide it and roll the window down, throw it out, roll the window back up, my dad is wrestling with this package of luncheon meat, trying to get out one slice. After all, he's got to eat later, right? So the big brown bear starts lumbering up to the car. And Dad decides, well, maybe he's getting a little too close for comfort here. And so he starts to roll the window up. Now, you got to remember that this was an early 60s Cadillac with all electric windows. And back then, the electric windows were a little slower than they are now. So Dad's pushing the up button on the window, trying to get it to go up. And Mom is on the master switch on her side, trying to push the up button. But somehow Dad's gotten confused, and instead of pushing the button, he's pulling the button, thinking he's raising the window. And so now the window is just kind of locked in this battle between Mom and Dad of going up and down, but unfortunately only going up and down about, 2 or 3 inches. And the window's making a little bit of progress moving up when this big brown bear sticks his snout right inside the window, drooling on the glass. The window's halfway up, half down, depending on your perspective and your, optimism on life. And my sister Anna, she's in the back seat screaming, and I'm yelling, "The bear's coming in the window." And Dad's cussing like a man who just lost a poker hand, and that bear's snout is wedged right there in the window gap, snorting and drooling and looking for his luncheon meat, his snack. And finally, Dad has enough presence of mind, I guess. My mom's yelling at him, "Leave the window alone, Tom. I'm trying to roll it up." And he finally lets go. The window rockets up, shoves the bear's nose out like a trap door slamming shut. And then there was this long silence in the car. And then my dad, I guess trying to act cool in the circumstance, says, "Well, I guess he wasn't that hungry after all." And that was the end of the feeding the wildlife story. And after that episode, the remainder of the trip was rather uneventful. Well, almost uneventful. I guess if there's an epilogue, it was this. He said, when we finally rolled back home into town, into Birmingham, after this 2-week adventure on the road, my mom, about 2 weeks after our coming back home, heads out to the freezer in the garage. And that's when she found the real disaster. While we'd been gone, my little niece, 3-4 years old, had been playing in the garage and had, I guess, I don't know, given her state of mind some days. I think she might have intentionally done it, but I'm assuming she accidentally unplugged the freezer. Now, if the freezer was empty, that's no big deal, but it wasn't, because inside that freezer was an entire butchered hog cut up by a butcher, wrapped in butcher's paper, and each individual package, of frozen or family-sized packages of frozen pork were, in the freezer, ready to be consumed by our family over whatever period of time. And got to remember now, it was July in Alabama, in a hot, unair-conditioned garage and a sealed freezer with, well, as you probably guessed, the pork going bad. And you can imagine the smell. I mean, and let's just say compared to that freezer, the bear smelled like French perfume. I mean, and my mom told me later, she said it took her 2 weeks just to get the smell out of the freezer using Clorox and everything she knew, the fumigate and baking soda and everything else. And, well, after that trip, Dad gave up teasing bears, said he'd stick to teasing monkeys at the zoo, which was a much safer species to mess with. And Mom never ate pork again. And to my knowledge, the day she passed away, she never allowed pork in her mouth because of what she saw and what she smelled and the gagging and all that took place when she opened that freezer. You can only imagine. So, and I learned an important lesson. Sometimes the real magic trick is getting the window rolled up before the bear finds out what's for lunch. And that's my story of the great American vacation, a real-life Griswold family called the Ellisons. And, well, I hope you enjoyed it. If you would, leave a comment and share any experiences you had with your family on vacation. I'd love to hear them and read about them. And, of course, if you have opportunity to share with someone about my podcast, Senior Moments, I would certainly appreciate it as well. There's a guy coming on here. He always comes on right about this time, and he always tells you what you need to do at this point. There's no dues to pay in this club, but I would appreciate it if you would pay attention and listen to his instructions and do what he says, okay? I would appreciate that. Leave a comment, and thanks again for joining. It's Sunday night. It's live at 5. It's Senior Moments, episode 28, and we'll see you next week. And have a blessed week this week. You take care. Well, hey, thanks for spending a few minutes with me on Senior Moments. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure and tap that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. I'll be back soon with more stories from a misspent youth, and maybe some of yours too.